Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name is Brian Julius. I'm the Chief Content Officer for Enterprise DNA, and I'm here today with Enterprise DNA expert and founder of StrengthFest Analytics, George Mount. We're here today to talk about the first week of the end of year content countdown rollout for Enterprise DNA. We're really excited about this. Typically for the past year, what we've been doing is rolling out one course every month, but we wanted to send the year out with a bang. And so for the next 4 Fridays, we're going to be rolling out a new course every week. And the first featured course is one that we're really excited about. We've been waiting for a while to dive into this topic. And George has put together a great course, the first in a series that we're going to be doing on R for Power BI users. So we've been branching out from Power BI into broader data science areas. We've rolled out the recent Python for Power BI series, and we wanted to roll out this R series to give folks a chance to choose between the two. We've talked recently, George, Galen Holland, and I, about the choice between those two programs, and we think that for certain users, Python is going to be more appropriate. For certain users, R is going to be the better choice. So wanted to spend some time today with George talking about the course, but let George introduce himself and his background, and take it away, George.
Thank you, Brian. I started in analytics about 10 years ago. At that point, I was very unprepared for what was going to hit me, and it's been my journey since then to kind of right the wrongs. In particular, my focus is really helping people who, for better or worse, they're in a position where they're focused on working with a lot of data. They may not have ever done that, and they are in a better spot than they may know to do pretty sophisticated data analysis. So, in this course, in this example, it would be working with R, showing that you're just learning a little bit of things like R, Python, analytics is going to put you and your whole organization on a really great footing to just excel with working with data.
That's great. And George, I'll mention this. George is the recent author of Advancing in Analytics from Excel and to Python and R. And it's really, as George said, it's really focused on making that big first step from, in this case, Excel, but also from Power BI into that second language, be it Python or R. And when George and Galen Holland and I talked the other week about kind of making that choice, we really highlighted 4 reasons why we thought bringing a second language to your Power BI skills is really important. The first of which, it lets you do complex analysis that would be either very difficult or impossible in Power BI alone. Second, it lets you handle really large data sets where you can do the pre-processing up front rather than having to pull everything into Power Query first. It provides you a lot of flexibility with new visual types and the ability to customize, particularly scientific and statistical visual types. And it lets you do things with a pro account, such as things like sentiment analysis that you would typically only be able to do in Power BI with a premium account. So a lot of reasons to learn this. And so, George, I wanted to start with you in terms of kind of who do you think the primary users who would benefit from going down the R road would be? I I myself am an R user, and given that you are comfortable in both, who do you see as really being the main targets of this course?
Yeah. So as far as the Power BI integration goes with R, I will say first that there are a lot of things that Power BI can do, just as smoothly as R. So, you're probably used to sorting and filtering rows or, calculating columns, that kind of, basic data cleaning you can keep doing in Power BI. There are going to be some things that R can handle. And I always like to say that if there weren't a reason to use either R or Python in Power BI, then Microsoft wouldn't have put them there, right? They're there for a reason. As far as making that distinction, taking the next step from Power BI into R or Python, and kind of which one to go down. A few factors that you mentioned to build off those. Data visualization is certainly well known for R. That's outside of Power BI. Just it has a very good reputation. It's very possible that if you were to go open The Economist or one of these publications that has a great reputation for data visualization, that they built those visualizations in R. And there's also a possibility to build more interactive visualizations using HTML and things like that with R than Python necessarily affords inside of Power BI. So, if you're looking for really custom visuals that are a little more interactive, maybe there's some kind of statistical, you can do some basic statistical visualizations in Power BI out of the box. I'm thinking like, clustering and basic forecasting and things like that. But, maybe there's something more custom you need to do with one of those. Those are actually built using R code. So if you've ever used the add-in to, do clustering, that's actually being done using R, which kind of leads into the next point of statistical analysis. So, a lot of people that get into R are coming from more of the research heavy background. Maybe that's in like pharmaceuticals or agriculture or something like that. And, they probably did a lot of statistics in graduate school using something like SPSS or SAS or one of those. And, they're looking to kind of get more into the modern analytics toolkit. R is a great choice for them because it really was built and bred for statistical analysis. I think that it's a pretty good jump, even maybe for Excel users who kind of came up through the ranks using Excel, and perhaps even Power BI to some extent. But we talk about this in the course, that there are a lot of kind of similarities in the origins in terms of how the data is structured in R. As you start to explore it, everything's more or less built around the idea of a table of data, right? And that's the same for DAX, for Power. I mean, everything's kind of looking to the table. So that makes it lends itself rather nicely if you're learning if you know something like Excel, you can get into R probably a little easier than you might expect. I mean, it is coding, and that's going to be different, but what's to say that you haven't done a lot of coding already, it's something like DAX or whatever else. So I would say that, visualizations and statistical analysis are probably the two things that R is best known for in general. And those certainly lend themselves into what they would be used for in Power BI as well.
And George, my experience with R is kind of similar, that there's in some ways kind of a bit of a cookie cutter aspect to it, that once you learn the basic functionality and kind of how data is handled and how commands are issued, that you can really kind of apply that to any package. And there's like 20,000 packages. So, you really have to, you have to write a pretty minimal amount of custom code to do some really fairly sophisticated things.
Yeah, I think I use the analogy in the course, but saying that there's an app for that is certainly appropriate in R. There's regardless of what you're needing to do, there's probably going to be some pre-written code that's going to be free for you to use. And we talk about in the course how that works, how to locate them, what the big ones are. There are, certainly use cases, especially when it's getting more into more statistically based analysis, where it's very, very likely that you'll be able to do it, in like a handful, if less, lines of code. In R, whereas trying to build it on your own in DAX or wherever else could be a monster, like dozens or plus lines. So I think that the kind of rule of thumb that R is hard, or it's harder to work with R than Excel or DAX or whatever isn't necessarily true. It's really a case by case kind of basis, and generally that comes down to how much statistics are involved and how much whether there's some kind of package externally available in R, and there usually is.
Yeah, I've never done an analysis that I couldn't find a package that did, and oftentimes it's a matter of choosing between multiple packages that do the same thing. So you raised the issue of statistical knowledge, and I wonder if you could talk a bit about kind of what sort of knowledge is assumed going into this course.
Yeah. So I don't expect that you have any coding experience, although you probably do if you've worked in Power BI. So we'll certainly build on that. I don't assume much statistical know-how. So, if you come in familiar with things like, the mean, median, and mode, standard deviation, we do get into things like hypothesis testing and inferential statistics, but I don't expect that you know really much about that, and we'll kind of walk through the mechanics of how that works. But if you're familiar with the basic, let's say like if you can run descriptive statistics in your tool of choice, and I'm thinking in particular the data analysis tool packet. Excel is a good one. And you can run that and you can interpret those basic summary statistics, then I think you're in a pretty good spot. If that sounds like something that you would like some help with, not to be super biased, but I think this would be a good resource for you. And in the course, I have a link. The publisher lets anybody log on to their website for free with a 30-day trial, and that would be more than enough time, I would think, to work through the first couple chapters of the book, and get familiar with things like I said, mean, median, mode, sample size, those basic kind of building blocks of statistics.
Yeah, and I think your book does a really nice job of just kind of plain language walking through those fundamental concepts. So yeah, highly recommended if folks don't feel they've got a firm foundation going in for that. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of your own work and kind of where you've found that nexus between Power BI and R to be helpful.
Yeah. So certainly visualizations is one that usually comes up in what I do, and when I read the room about what people are interested in working on. Even something as simple as, like building a histogram or a box plot or something like that. Some of those more statistically informed plots are really easily done in R. Also, I really like having a bit of statistical know-how in my toolkit, and it's something that easily gets overlooked in a lot of business intelligence projects. But the ability to check whether what you're seeing in the data is really to be expected at large or not. So kind of taking your analysis to the next step. I mean, it's one thing to say that some program, let's say you're doing an A/B test or some kind of the result of some kind of intervention in a beta test or something like that, which is what a lot of organizations do now. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, there's a difference, that's fine. But it's really another thing to be able to use the tools of statistics and say, well, given how much data we collected, is this enough data to know whether this is going to play out at large? Is the difference that we're seeing worth continuing? Because, ultimately it's not just about, crunching the numbers and getting the results, but it's about using that to guide, your business strategy. So again, not to beat a dead horse, but the visualizations and statistical analysis are things that R does really well inside of Power BI that have certainly worked well for my own projects, when I'm being asked to work on those types of cases, and that in general have a pretty good reception for analysts, have helped them a lot.
Yeah, no, that's great. That mirrors my my experience as well. And I see a lot of times in Power BI, you'll see people like do like a scatter plot and then add the trend line. And that's great. And that can give you some good information. But a lot of times my question is, okay, is that trend line significantly different from zero, the slope of that? And that,
Right.
is that showing a real trend, or is it just showing an artifact of the sample data you happen to draw for that particular analysis? And I think that's where, one of the places where, R can really bring your analysis to the next level, where you can make some much more definitive statements about what you're seeing a real effect or just an artifact of the data.
Yeah.
And so, that to me, I see it a lot in the challenges where, people are identifying good trends, but boy, if they could take that one next step, that would really add a lot to the analysis.
Yeah.
So by the end of the course, what should people be expecting to be able to accomplish in R?
Yeah, so for a beginning course like this, you should be in a good shape to, as we mentioned, packages are a huge component of R's power. So you'll be able to identify packages that might be good for what you're doing. You'll be able to get them up and running on your machine. And, I really, in the course and in general, I really try to help people learn to learn, right? I can't teach you everything. You're never going to learn everything about R. It's
Right.
kind of a fruitless attempt to try to cover every possible use case for you. What I can do is give you a sense of what R is good for, and we've talked about that, and how to do those things and how to get unblocked when you are doing those things. So, how to write a good example, how to look for documentation, and some of the really popular R functionalities. You get a really good handle of what R is known for, what R is good for. You'll be able to identify with some of the common packages and use cases and things like that. Build some visualizations. So there's some of these package names that you'll just hear over and over when you get into R. So like ggplot2 and dplyr and those types of things. So we'll be covering why those are so potent, how to use them. And then toward the end of the course, we get into just a little tiny bit of inferential statistics. So, we're doing a hypothesis or a t-test. So, basically just kind of checking the difference between two groups. And then you'll see really where, and, the big one, the big objective is how all this fits into Power BI. So you'll certainly see that too. Where are the places that you can inject R into that? How does it work? What are the pros and cons of each? And so by the end of the course, you'll have, an R enhanced Power BI report that you'll be, combining R with the rest of Power BI to just, like you said, kind of take your reporting to the next level.
Yeah, and that's a big leap for one course. I mean, that's a lot of functionality that you can gain from one course. I'm wondering if you can give us kind of a preview of the next two installments. We've talked about this as at least a 3-part series, and kind of where you think you're headed on this one.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there are some other use cases that R can really come in handy, whether that is kind of irregular or very large data sources. Handling a very large data set using R can come in handy. Working with things like tax data, right, where you either want to classify whether that data content is positive in nature versus negative, or sentiment analysis in general. More advanced kind of pattern matching and regular expressions. And then there's still a whole lot more of data visualizations. I mean, you learn the building blocks of building visualizations in R this first course. There's still a lot more customization that can be done. Not to mention the whole breadth of statistical analysis and machine learning that can be done in R. So, tools like linear regression, classification models, building more predictive predictively inspired analytics models is another thing that we didn't necessarily get into in the course. And then how to work with that kind of data, all of the edge cases and exceptions and exclusions. You have to think about, the missing values and the outliers, and how do you, if you're working with a big data set, you're trying to predict something or explore some relationship. How do you go through that? And how do you use R and Python, or R and Power BI together to do that well?
Yeah, and that sounds great. I mean, that's exactly what we're hoping to bring to folks, is kind of that full range of capabilities. And one of the things you mentioned before is kind of the reputation of R being hard and kind of daunting, and I can kind of see that, just in the sense that it is, as you say, kind of this massive universe of packages and everything. But one of the things I've always found is that the RStudio interface is great. I mean, it's a great environment to work in. And I know in this course you go through that. And I've always found that to be, it was really not until, Tabular Editor 3 came along that we had, I think, in Power BI kind of an interface that was as good as what the R folks have been working in for years.
Yeah, we do cover RStudio and the ins and outs of when to work in there, how to work in there, and this and that. And the other thing that I want to bring up with the courses is, I really want them to be more than just a manual, and I don't want them to just be you watching me do stuff. I really want them to be interactive. I want you to, like I said, it's a fool's errand for me to try to show you everything you can do in R. That's just not going to happen. But what I can do is give you the tools so that when you are, given some kind of task that you need to do something, I can kind of give you the mental model that you need to kind of work through that problem. So that's really what I'm trying to do with these courses. They're not just going to be a manual. They're not, something to just kind of watch me do it. And, that's that. I'm going to give you all the scripts. I want you to walk through them if you're up for it. I really want this to be your own. And rather than trying to learn everything, it's really more about, kind of picking up how to take yourself to wherever destination you end up choosing.
Well, George, that's great. That I think that is a great note to end on. And, I really thank you for the time and energy that went into putting this course together. I think it's great. I've been through it myself, and, even having used R for a number of years, learned some neat new tricks in that. And, just feel it's going to really open doors for folks to get into something that I think they're going to really find expands their capabilities, and they also may really enjoy. It's a little different way of looking at things, different way of doing Power BI, and I think it's cool. So really appreciate it, and we'll be back talking more when the next parts roll out early next year. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Enterprise DNA TV. If you enjoyed the content covered in this particular tutorial, please throw the video a like. It really helps us and we really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Enterprise DNA TV channel. We have a huge amount of content coming out all the time from myself and a range of content creators, all dedicated to improving the way that you use Power BI and the Power Platform. Lastly, check out Enterprise DNA's website. Plenty of resources and further learning that you can access very easily. All the best. Take care.